This is just a warning to you all that have done your foam surrounds on your Infinity, I guess they're PVC woofers in the past. I did mine in the mid 90s and I thought they were pretty good. Didn't really like the way they turned out overall, but they worked fine. But something I just noticed. And look, that stuff is just rolling off. And I got a full speaker kit from a high-end speaker store, and it came with this big, I remember it being like this green and white tube of cement that you used, and I just took this other one off in one piece. So you may want to check into that if you've done your speakers in the past. Don't think they're still attached, because these are still look good. I mean, they look fine, but you don't notice that these little parts are peeling up, and it's letting air slip out past the actual foam ring, and yeah, that's not a good thing for a woofer. Just an FYI. I went ahead and I bought a speaker kit like everybody else. Now it comes with these nice new designed for speaker glue, and again, you don't want the white stuff, you want the clear stuff, you know, for the PVC. But it actually, I did a set in the past and it worked out fine. So we finished up our RS3A10s, and they didn't turn out too bad. We've had them running for a couple days now. We just wanted to make sure everything stayed stuck and all that good stuff, and they seem to be working very well. On to the next thing. What I have here is going to take things to a whole new level. I can't wait to get it open. Alright, ladies and germs, what I have here is a QSC CX254 professional amplifier, and what it is basically it is a 250 watt at 4 ohms per channel with 4 channels, and that's to feed these monsters, and they're known as receiver killers. And I've just had enough. I've got this guy over here going into protection mode if I get too far up on the volume scale, and now I'm going to put some professional quote-unquote equipment to the test. Now the reason I went with this guy, one, it's cost. I'll be honest with you, some of these home amps are just ridiculous. I hear a lot of people talk crap about these pro amps, you know, just because they've got the ears on them and they're made for racks. You know what? I'm function over form any day. So if this thing does as I expect, I'm really going to be pleased about it. Being that my Infinities are 200 watts each at 4 ohms, I mean 250 watts, gives me a little bit of headroom on top. I'm never up that loud anyway. I mean, I already can rock upstairs to where the pictures are falling off the walls. So let's take a look at this amp real quick. It does have a bit of an industrial look to it, but once I, as you saw, I took this little faceplate off, which that protects all the gains here from being fooled with in a commercial application. It does come a little bit more with a softer face and a little more access about what's going on. And I'm sure a lot of you are going to say something about it being a commercial amp. Well, it really is just a classic AB amplifier, honestly. It's a little older, early 2000s version, but I mean, this one's remarkably clean. I mean, there's not like a scratch on the whole thing. I mean, it is like perfect. After looking at the blocks here, it looks like they were using a set of stereo speakers with a subwoofer. You know, do 2 stereo speakers on this side, and on this side you bridge these two and you'd have 500 watts for a subwoofer, which is really nice. I've already started emptying. I'm telling you, you can really add up some stuff real quick. I mean, I've still got about another 10-15 minutes of just getting things out. And then I'm going to have to radically change the shelving. This was never intended to be a stereo cabinet in the first place. It's actually kind of a glass bookshelf, but I went ahead and I added this, basically a wire drop. It kind of goes all the way down there and it goes all the way out and drops out the back of the thing. And it's nice to see the sunlight come through the back door, middle of winter time, in a basement. And this cabinet is a real fine piece of carpentry. I mean, it was custom built for a lady and it just didn't really kind of work on her house when she moved, so I ended up with it. But this on the back here is not a fine piece of carpentry. But it functionally inside it looks beautiful. It's just the outside's a little rough looking. But that's what I mean about my wire drop. It's the width of a 2x4, which is about, what, 3.5 inches. And it comes down and there is no bottom, but it actually comes further down than the inside of the cabinet, so you actually drop wires out of the back of the cabinet, which has worked out real well, and it helps a lot with ventilation also, because you actually be able to get an air draft going up through here. And I usually leave the front of the cabinet open, in which case it blows out the front. Moving along here, I've gone ahead and pulled out my Onkyo TX8511 receiver out of the stack here because I need to do some modifications. I love this receiver. One of the main reasons I bought it, it was one of the more modern ones that actually came with tape monitors. And if you use an equalizer, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I have no desire to get rid of it, being that it's in my possession, and I like it. And I've had it since it was brand new. The only flaw about this guy is it has no pre-outs. It has tape monitor and all that stuff, which of course, you know, if you have volume control on your amp, then you're good to go. But this amp does not have volume control, so I need to do something about that. I came up with this guy here. This is a Russ Sound ADP-1.2 high to low line level interface, basically. It's what we use in the auto world. I find it amazing between the auto world, the TV world, and the audiophile world. There's just like, they live in 3 separate planets, and yet they all use the same exact stuff. So just kind of flips me out. But in the auto world, if you have a head unit, basically a receiver, tape deck, CD player, whatever it happens to be, and it has no pre-outs, you go to one of these. And they have a great reputation for being fine. And there's a real argument over the fact of whether the pre-outs are better than the amplified. Some people, well, I'm not going to say some, I'm going to say a lot of people tend to believe that what comes out of the amplifier is better than what comes out of the pre. They actually believe in let it run through the whole machine, put it through one of these guys to bring it down to levels that the actual amp can handle, and then send it off to the amp. And all that started because of this guy right here. This is the switch, which everybody has. Well, maybe not everybody, but a few of us have. That, you know, it's your speaker in ohm switch, and if you've got 4 ohm speakers that are kind of beating on your receiver, you flip it over and it's like a magic, and all of a sudden it works fine and it doesn't go into, you know, protect mode or anything else anymore. The issue I found out about this switch, and this is the reason why this whole project is going on to begin with, is that when this switch is flipped over to the 4 ohm load, it actually cuts off parts of the music, because it's basically like a limiter. You know, it's like it's a restrictor plate for you NASCAR folks. It just kind of cuts off those pieces that are going to make the amp go, no, no, no. And I don't want that. I want full range sound. I mean, I want it to sound like it does at 1/4 volume. I want it to sound like the same at 3/4 volume. So what I need to do is add this adapter. And what I've done is I've removed this switch, which it's going back, of course. But I do have this adapter, and I see a lot of people like just adapt, you know, mount it on the outside or what have you. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to figure a way of getting this guy in here so it sticks out right. The rest of the input outputs on the back. And in the process, I plan on soldering some wires to these lugs down here. That way it'll all be internal, and you can just go ahead and use the receiver as normal, or you can actually use it from these pre-outs, which will take its power right from the actual speaker leads themselves. So it makes it a perfect scenario. But I just don't want it ugly, so the real thing is going to be to actually make it look pretty and functional. Little blood, little sweat, no tears, thankfully. I've gone ahead, I'm really kind of doing some super protection here, so not really going to see a whole lot. But what I've done is I've gone ahead and built this shelf here inside of the receiver. And I figure I'm going to use this vent hole right here, and I'm just going to elongate it out a little bit for this. And the reason I had to put that shelf in is because this, of course, comes this way, and there's no place for it to attach flat down. Maybe if I attached it underneath of the back side of the top, I wouldn't want to do that, because if you have to remove the top, then you pull wires out. So what I'm going to do is this, and then it will slide forward after I cut this out. And I was just doing my final fit up here, and that's the plan. We've made our way out of the garage and back down in the basement here, and we got our Onkyo set up on its side for another phase of our Russo ADP speaker level to line level interface, quote unquote. This is where we planned on putting it, so we've kind of like judging where we need to put our wires at. And what I did, and so we don't just have this bare face, I took a little piece of cardboard here and I kind of trimmed it out, and you know, you don't see those little lettering on the bottom of it, all that. That's just to make sure it stays where it's supposed to when it goes in, and you only see the black face of that. But for now, I was just getting these wires soldered in place. Lucky enough that actually there's a slot, and it goes up and over and down, so that's how they feed the two channels. Is actually, this is a bar right here, right here, right here. So I was able to slide the wire underneath of it and then just basically solder the tops of it to the backs of the speaker leads. So now I have 4 nice leads, and I just got them all chopped off to the right length and trimmed down, and they will actually fit in there, and they'll be kind of nice and neat and leave enough room for all the rest of the stuff to get installed, which that's what I have to do now. Alright, there's today's accomplishment. They're soldered in down here at our speaker leads. Wires run up here. Jump in the rough sound converter, and now we have low outputs on a Onkyo TX8511, which didn't come with them. And even though nobody will see it, it looks pretty good from the back also. Alright, off to phase 2 here, and pretty much the star of the show, the amplifier. Just got it in my cabinet here, making sure it fits. And for being rack equipment, I mean, it's pretty much the same size as the receiver. I mean, just the ears on the back stick out a little further. You could take those off if you wanted to. And these front ears, this is where the rack fits in right there. So it does make it a little wider than the average stereo piece. I wish they would actually make these kind of removable entirely. The real metal piece of it, the angle there, can be removed, but the actual sheet metal on the outside can't be. So not sure what I'm going to do about that, but I need to put some feet on the guy also, because I don't want it actually sitting right on the wood itself. I know they build these upside down, and this one's actually is upside down at the moment, so most of the heat would actually be in the top, so it wouldn't be so hot in the bottom, but I really don't want it sitting actually on the wood. But I've rambled on too much. What I really need to do is just take this guy out, take it apart real quick. We're just going to do a really quick cleaning because it looks immaculate, as I said. I'm going to figure out some sort of feet and maybe alter its appearance just a tiny bit if possible, and then it'll be time to hook her up. Alright, so I got my amp over here on the table, and I'm looking it over, and I am like insanely impressed. This thing is beautiful. I mean, it's probably 10, 12, 15 years old. Everything looks beautiful inside. I don't see nothing burned, nothing bulging. I don't see anything like you would expect out of something that's been abused. Alright, let's get this guy cleaned up and get it back to service. I'm out at my bench now. Got my air compressor all charged up and ready to go. Getting ready to give this guy a good blowout. And as I said, every time I look at it, it's like, man, I shouldn't even bothered. But I did want to put feet on it. And I did find these nice little rubber feet that I happened to buy at Home Depot just because I saw them. I knew I'd use them one day, and here they are. I'm not going to use the wood screws, of course, so I just came up with these set of 4 nuts and bolts here, or nuts and screws, and some washers, and we're just going to use those. And I'm just making sure that, you know, they end up right here, like right here, right there, you know, right there. So they're not actually sticking down any place where they would actually make contact with something. Like even this here, I don't want it to hit that. So we're going to do that and then see where it gets us. All clean and all put back together. And with that, we now have feet. Yeah, I just couldn't leave well enough alone. I really wasn't big on these ears, so what I did is I pulled these pieces out, which actually were big L pieces at one time, and I cut them off, and I made them into brushed aluminum on 2 sides, so that way when they go back in, they'll actually fit there like so. And this piece has to come off yet, but I'm just in the middle of it here, as you can see. Got our files out, and what I did is I cut it off. It stuck out to about here, Then I got this real stiff hard file, and I went across it just so everything was flat. I mean, it made sure everything, there was no gaps in it from one end to another. And now I'm just going to take in this one here I'm working on. I'm going to actually just take my belt sander over here, and I'm going to belt sand the face off, and that just leaves that brushed aluminum look like it has on this one. And when that's gone, the only thing you'll see is that. And there it is in all its glory. It looks nice. Got it all put back together. I made sure these accents didn't like butchered up on the inside either. So where the cabinet comes into the actual L piece here that used to stick out for the rack, it now kind of curves out slightly. I don't know if you can actually see that. But I made it soft curve out so you can actually run your finger across it. There's nothing even scratchy on it. Like I said, we removed the face plate, which is this guy right here. And we did the same here on the other side with a nice accent strip. But now I have to go and make it fit in my cabinet because I've got a mess right now.